From the Gospel of Mary, chapter 6. Peter said to Mary, "Sister, we know that the Savior loved you more than the rest of the women. Tell us the words of the Savior which you remember, which you know, and we do not, nor have we heard them." Mary answered and said, "What is hidden from you, I will tell you." And she began to say to them these words. Reopen a long-told tale, we may find that there are hidden things that we have not known, and those things we think we have known, but our knowledge is partial, incomplete, offered in a simplification of universal truths. Today we seek knowledge, gnosis. We are agnostics, interpreting a tapestry that took millennia to weave with carefully chosen hues and stories. For those with eyes and ears of the Spirit, let us see and hear. What did Mary share with the other disciples, both men and women? What wisdom did she alone have, and how was it transmitted to her? And what new light do we bring to our lives with these mysteries uncovered? Many of us have received just one story among many to represent the life, teachings, death, and resurrection of Jesus, whom some call the Christ. If we as Unitarian Universalists are to find relevance for ourselves in the Easter moment, we must be willing to open that which may have been slammed shut and locked away within ourselves and within the traditions we have inherited. We must approach this new material and new perspective with open minds and hearts, being true to what we claim to be. Easter is tricky for Unitarian Universalists. Although our heritage is Christian, and many of us are come-inners from Christian backgrounds, the desire to celebrate Easter can be complicated. Maybe we have an allergic reaction to a magical Jesus and the resurrection. So today we will attempt to reconcile our various understandings and expectations for this holiday and our place in it. We will reclaim a story that is more powerful than our more orthodox siblings could even imagine. As is often the case, we have so much to learn and so much to unlearn. So I invite you to suspend for this time your disbelief and let the gospel story live in the 21st century. At no point will you be asked to believe in miracles or set aside your reason. I simply request that you open your minds to perspectives that may be new to you, even if they challenge tightly held assumptions. I also note that the Bible is not and was never intended to be a historical document. It is not an eyewitness account of literal events. The purpose of the stories of the Bible is to describe people, brilliant, flawed, painfully human, and their journey toward wholeness. We are meant to find ourselves in these stories and to confront our own actions and assumptions. So I'm curious as to which Easter story you know. There's more than one. I'm just referring to the Gospels that you can find in the Bible, in the approved scriptures, not any of the hundreds of other Gospels, legends, and letters that did not make the cut. So, with a nod to our Unitarian ancestor, William Channing Gannett, let's discover what is commonly known among us. So raise your hand if this story resonates for you. When Jesus was arrested, all his friends fled. Is that a story that you know? Okay, good. So that's somewhat true to the story, but I do wonder if everyone left, how do we know what happened? Historians at the time barely even mention the prophet of Galilee, much less any big theatrical details like earthquakes and the sun blinking out. Okay, so kind of in that same vein, how many of you in the story of Easter that you know, it contains that Jesus died alone, well, aside from the other people on crosses? Nope, not alone. Although Peter denied him and Judas betrayed him, the Gospels of Matthew, Mark, and Luke note that his friends and Mary Magdalene specifically were at the cross. Okay, so how many of you know the story as there is an angel sitting on a rolled away stone to announce Jesus' resurrection? You're afraid now to raise your hands, I know. Yes. See, haha. For those of you who were afraid to raise your hands, now you're feeling a little bad. Yes, at least in Matthew and Mark. In Luke's story, two angels abruptly appear as the Marys, Mary Magdalene, Mary the mother of Jesus, and Mary Salome, as they come to investigate the empty tomb. In John's Gospel, Mary Magdalene goes to the tomb with two of the male disciples, and while they are inside investigating things, an angel appears to her, alone. So this is not to diminish your knowledge of the story, nor is it to diminish the story. It's to highlight the fact that there is more than one. Each storyteller speaks from their own experience and viewpoint, what's important to them. Too often, we pounce on inconsistencies as if there was one factual story that must be adhered to, and any departure is proof that the story is false. How ironic that we dismiss the literalism of believers by wielding the sword of factual literalism. When we engage the text with new eyes and open hearts, we can discover new things. So we began with an unfamiliar text, the Gospel of Mary, that did not make it into the canon, the approved books that eventually became the Bible. But now let's turn to the Gospel of John, one that you're probably more familiar with. This is from chapter 20. We're going to pick it up 2/3 of the way through. Mary was standing close outside the tomb weeping. Still weeping, she leaned forward into the tomb and saw two angels clothed in white sitting there where the body of Jesus had been lying, one where the head and the other where the feet had been. "Why are you weeping?" asked the angels. "They have taken my master away," she answered, "and I do not know where they have laid him." After saying this, she turned around and looked at Jesus standing there, but she did not know that it was Jesus. "Why are you weeping? Whom are you seeking?" he asked. Supposing him to be the gardener, Mary answered, "If it was you, sir, who carried him away, tell me where you have laid him, and I will take him away myself." "Mary," said Jesus. She turned around and exclaimed in Hebrew, "Rabboni," which is to say, teacher. It's notable that in this gospel account, Mary's at the graveside alone. She goes there, she has the right to go there, the prerogative, because she is the companion, the koinonos in Greek. Mary is not the biblical repentant prostitute, a tenacious lie that was nearly 1,400 years in the correcting and still not completely out of people's heads. But she was the apostle that Jesus loved the most. We find that in the Gospel of Philip, also one of those Gospels that didn't make the cut. Jesus and Mary were kindred spirits, and it's possible that the secret knowledge that Mary held and the other disciples desired was born of that intimacy of being kindred hearts. Yet in John's account of the risen Christ, Mary doesn't recognize Jesus. She doesn't recognize him until he calls her by name. He rises to her first, but she doesn't realize who it is until she hears her name in his voice. And then she calls him Rabboni, which is more personal. It's more emphatic than the title of rabbi, teacher. She actually calls him great master. I need to make an important distinction between resurrection and resuscitation. It's a distinction that even the gospel writers couldn't agree on. In some accounts, the risen Jesus cannot eat, and he cannot drink, and can seemingly walk through walls, while in others, he cooks breakfast and shares the meal with his disciples. He offers his hands and side for them to touch. I think it matters far less to have an actual resuscitated body in our midst than it is to discover that something of our beloved dead lives on in us. They've changed us in some fundamental way, and we experience their presence even in their absence. Regardless of the variations on the story that the Gospels present, earthquakes or no earthquakes, one or two angels, the presence or not of the risen Christ, there is an element of the story, as John narrates it, that deserves our attention. Because, miracles aside, it may be the most important, overlooked moment. Mary Magdalene, follower, as noted in the Gospels of Thomas and Philip, beloved companion of Jesus, does not recognize him until she hears her name spoken in his voice. Mary Magdalene, who bore witness as Jesus was tortured and killed, and even stood watch as he was laid in the tomb, only experiences the reality that love always gets the last word when she hears him call her by name. As our opening words proclaimed, love gets the last word. If I were composing a story, a huge story that would inspire generations of the truth that love is stronger than death, that even when we do nothing to invite love into our lives, it persists, its presence unmistakable and transformative, that story might contain the drama and pathos of the Easter story. You see, it doesn't matter if a story is literally true. It can still touch us. It can change us. We know that. We know what it feels like to be caught up in a story as we weep at poignant moments in books and films. A story does not need to be long and elaborate to be true and to have an impact. Stories have the power to change us if we allow ourselves to cross that holy threshold and find our place in the story. We are changed when we say yes to the voice calling our name, inviting us into a story larger than ourselves, calling us into service, calling us into authenticity. I wonder if your heart is attuned to the sound of that voice calling your name, and what is it calling you to?